All right, guys, so I put it out there on Instagram that I'd be doing a Q&A in the next vlog. So a big thank you to everybody that sent in questions to my Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at Centralian_exotics. I post a lot of snake content there, so go ahead and give it a follow. All right, so we're gonna go through these questions. Let's see what everybody out there wanted to know. Okay, first up, question coming in from Fennel the Breadlie. Thank you so much for the question. What turned reptiles from a general hobby into more of a passion for you? That is a really good question. You know, growing up, I was always very much an animal lover, but it wasn't specifically reptiles. It certainly wasn't specifically snakes. That was something that developed for me really like halfway through my undergrad in college. Once I was into reptiles, it really just kind of snowballed. You know, you start with one and you fall in love with that one, and before you know it, you have 20 snakes behind you, and you're looking around thinking, how the hell did I get here? You know, I guess really the answer to this question would be that it never really was just a general hobby. I think that it was a passion from the second I got my first snake in college. Like I've talked about in the past, I had a couple corn snakes growing up, and I wasn't really passionate about those at all, but as soon as I got into pythons and even this rosy boa that I had for a few years, I would say that it was just an instant passion, and that it didn't really start out as a hobby and turn into a passion. It just captured me from the get-go and continues to do so. Next up from IQ Exotics. If you had to choose a favorite, would it be the womas or the blackheads, and why? That is a really tough one. Both womas and blackheads are incredible species. Of course, the only two species in the genus Aspidaites, as we've talked about on this channel quite a bit. You know, they really differ in personality quite a bit. I would say that the blackheads they're still a confident snake, but maybe they're a little bit less reactive. They don't seem to react as quickly or strongly to what's happening around them. They're a little bit more passive, if that makes sense. But also still very inquisitive, very active. If I had to choose a favorite, it would probably be the blackhead. Now, I know that goes against what I said a couple weeks ago on Morelia Python Radio, when I said that womas were becoming my favorite species. And look, the thing is, I love womas, blackheads, breadlie, probably pretty close equally, and it probably changes by the day which one I would say is my favorite. But the reason I'm going to choose blackheads over womas, for the sake of this question, is that the blackheads get a little bigger, and I do like that substantial size. I think it's really cool to work with a snake that is substantial in that way. So bigger, the blackheads are less, at least the ones that I have, are less food aggressive. There's going to be less feeding bites with blackheads in general. With the animals I have here, none of my blackheads have bitten me. One of my womas has decided that I am a meal, so that's just more likely to happen with womas in my experiences. And also, you know, unfortunately, blackheads are just a lot rarer and they're harder to come by. So if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather put my eggs in the blackhead basket and try to advance that species in the hobby and try to make them more plentiful so that more people can experience how fascinating and how cool they are. And they're just so cool looking. Like, let's be honest, that jet black head and the typical Aspidaites banding on the body, it's awesome. All right, next up from Elena Agua. I apologize if I'm saying the name wrong. You see it on the screen here. Elena says, do you check any of your snakes for nidovirus? And when is that a necessary thing to do? Okay, great question. Big subject. The two most well-known snake diseases in captivity, nidovirus and crypto, right? So, to answer the question, I have not paid for the Nido test yet for any of my snakes. Now, what I do is I have a very strict quarantine policy. When I bring new animals into my collection, they do not mix with the rest of my animals. I keep them as far away as physically possible for months. Now, Nido is something that we're still gathering a lot of information about. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily 100% known how common it is in collections and to what degree it affects certain reptiles, which reptiles it affects, which ones it doesn't, why some animals tank, why others don't. And honestly, I'm definitely not an expert on the subject. I'll say that straight up. I've done a little bit of research on Nido because, of course, it's something we should all worry about. It has negatively affected many collections. I think it has been particularly tough on green tree pythons, if I'm not mistaken. So it definitely should be taken seriously, and there are tests available for purchase. It is something that I would like to do with the green tree python that I recently acquired, a test for Nido. That is going to definitely be happening in the future, and I'll try to make a video on that process. I wasn't super worried about it until I brought in that green tree because for the most part, almost all of my snakes came from the same place, which is Nick Mutton at Inland Reptile. The blackheads and womas, of course, are from other places, but all the bredli, for the most part. No, yeah, all the bredli came from Nick's house, so I wasn't especially worried. But that's a great question, and it's something that we should all keep in mind. And I will definitely be looking to learn more about Nido and test my green tree python and maybe some of my animals to see if I indeed am free from it here. That being said, I have not had any symptomatic animals in my collection. I have not had any illnesses aside from a respiratory infection in a ball python that I no longer own about 4 years ago. So since then, every snake in my collection has been completely healthy. I haven't had to manage any illnesses. So if I was seeing respiratory infections popping up, if I was seeing signs of Nido, I would be much more inclined to shell out a lot of money for tests. That being said, again, quarantine, so important. You won't necessarily know that an animal has it until it's too late. So that's the importance of quarantine. Thank you, Elena. And perfectly right on the same subject, Elena with the second question: how long should a snake be in quarantine and what do you look out for? Okay, so super, super important question. The length of a quarantine, it depends who you ask. Everybody has a little bit of a different idea of what a quarantine should look like. In my personal opinion, I think that you should quarantine a new snake for at least 3 months. I know that sometimes that's hard to do, and I know that all of us are probably guilty of cutting that time short. Certainly for me, when I'm getting animals from Nick, because almost all of these animals are already from Nick, I know that I've been a little bit relaxed with quarantine in the past. I don't do that anymore. I'm very strict with my quarantine now. What am I looking for? I'm looking for mites, first of all. I know we are all very aware of mites, so looking in the water dish, looking for any little black spots crawling around on the paper towel. When I do put a new snake in quarantine, I do spray Prevenamite on some clean paper towel for the first few weeks, just in case that snake did come in with mites. They'll crawl off the snake and die. In addition, I'm looking for anything irregular, whether it be regurgitations, hesitance to feed, any signs of respiratory infection, basically anything out of the ordinary. I am not a veterinarian. I don't claim to know all of the potential diseases or things that can go wrong with a snake and what that looks like in terms of how it manifests. So really, I'm just looking for anything out of the ordinary in addition to the mites. A lot of people also will look at the feces of a new snake, maybe get a fecal done with a vet for parasites and things like that. So just looking for normal looking snake poop, which is always fun there. So yeah, definitely quarantine your animals. If you fail to do so, everything might be fine 99% of the time, but it just takes that 1% for everything to come crashing down and for all of your hard work to be for nothing when your collection tanks. Okay, a third question from Elena. Elena, thank you so much. When you get a new snake, what kinds of things do you look for in terms of health? So this ties in again to the previous two questions. When I get a new snake, I do a once-over for mites, really focusing in on the face region, looking for any signs of mites there. Little black dots crawling around. Before buying the snake, I ask a lot of questions, okay? I make sure that the snake is feeding well. I ask, what the last feedings were and how successful they've been. If you're getting a snake from a pet shop, you want to look at the body mass of the animal. Is it overweight? Is it underweight? How is the body condition looking? Just general things like that. For the most part, I'm not buying snakes at pet shops anymore. Mostly new acquisitions for me are through other breeders that I know. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you again, Elena. Okay, next up from Valhalla Exotics. How has field biology helped to advance me as a keeper? That is a really good question. I guess I'm going to call all the questions good questions, because they are. I think that it really has had a large effect on how I view my keeping. Being a field biologist and being outside almost every day for long periods of time, I feel like I am a lot more conscious of the ecology side of snakes and just thinking about what they mean to the broader environment, how they interact with both the living and non-living elements in their natural habitat. Everything in an ecosystem is connected, right? So snakes eat, snakes are eaten, snakes hide, snakes hunt. What I'm trying to say is that working in field biology and being in these environments, I'm constantly thinking about where an animal might be, what an animal might be doing, why is it doing that, why might it be doing something different, what would need to change for that animal to exhibit a different behavior or look to do something different. And how do all these pieces connect? What is an animal eating? What is an animal trying to avoid being eaten by? I guess in terms of me as a keeper here in my house, field biology has just broadened my perspective and my scope. It makes it more fascinating for me to observe my animals and see in a captive setting what they are choosing to do, how they're behaving, and trying to, in my mind, apply that to what they would be doing if they were in their native habitats. Why are they doing something? What natural forces imprinted that instinct into them? For example, woma pythons, my womas dig, from time to time, they'll be under their substrate sometimes. From the lens of just a keeper, maybe I'm thinking, well, the snake's in a box, it has nothing to do all day, it's exploring every inch of the cage. Okay, from the field biology perspective, maybe I'm thinking, these animals come from arid desert environments and they use burrows frequently, and this animal has the instinct to be underground, and it is seeking out that opportunity even in a captive setting, just as it would in the outback. So things like that. For me, it just is much more rewarding to think about ecology and thinking about the natural history of these animals and how they relate to their native ranges. That's more rewarding to me now than just simply looking for a specific paint job, which is why I'm probably going to be moving away from morphs in future projects. Thinking of your animals from biological perspective and ecological perspective really gives you more of an admiration, a respect for their natural forms and their natural behaviors. And it makes it seem a little bit silly that people obsess over broken genes and morphs and basically making these animals into mutants. And I'm not trying to tell you not to do morphs. I have lots of morphs in my collection. They can be fascinating and rewarding projects, but I think at the same time we have to keep in mind how naturally amazing these things are on their own, and there should be value and fulfillment placed in looking at those aspects as well. Okay, Tradbo Jeff, I hope I'm saying that right, says, will you upload an audio-only version of your Nick Mutton interview on a podcast source? The answer is yes. In fact, the audio is already out. Most, if not all, places that podcasts can be found. I know it's on Spotify and Apple Music, and the host site is Podbean. So if you look for Humans of Herpetoculture, Nick Mutton, it should pop up for you. And we're going to be doing the second episode of the show this weekend. Actually, I'll be talking with Eric Burke of E.B. Morelia, and so that will be out on YouTube in video form, as well as out audio only on the podcast, typical podcast sources, so keep your eyes out for that. Thank you, Jeff. Next, from Puget Sound Pythons. Thank you so much for the question. What is a goal species for you to keep in the future? So there are many. I definitely have a lot of species that I want to work with in the future. The first of which being diamond pythons. I definitely want to get a pair of natural normal diamonds. I think that they're an incredible species. Another species, just like the breadlie, that really like to get cold in the winter, so they would easily fit into my environment here. I would love to work with water pythons. I would love to work with dry marcon, probably Crebo. I'm not sure that I would dive straight into indigos. And then, of course, inland carpet pythons I have a deposit down on with Nick, so I will be getting inlands shortly once they're feeding and established and ready to go. Now, of course, just like most of you, that is probably something that changes pretty often, and as soon as you get a goal species, a whole bunch of other goal species emerge, and it's just a never-ending cycle of wanting to add snakes. So, but really, I think what I need to do at the moment is just round out the groups of species that I already have. I do want to get another male blackhead, which is going to be a pricey investment, along with another female woma, and maybe another false water cobra, maybe another green tree python. So I'll try to be wise with my additions going forward, rounding out what I already have in motion rather than starting completely new projects. Male Hyoit Justin. I'm definitely not saying that right. Said do a full collection tour. Justin, that is something that I am planning on doing. Look out for that in a future video. If I do that on this video, it would be way too long, but it's coming. So thank you for that. I will be doing that. And that is the Q&A for today. Thanks so much, everybody that sent in a question. I will be doing this again. I love interacting with all you guys, answering questions, hearing what you're thinking. So definitely give me a follow on Instagram. And next time I put up the Q&A thing on my story, ask away. Let's keep the conversation going. All right. Thanks so much.